So, first episode that I've ever done of anything podcasting ever. Uh, and obviously, we're in the lockdown at the moment, so affectionately, this will be known as Lost in the Lockdown. I thought it was very apt to do that, especially given the nature of the show and where we all seem to find ourselves in the world right now. So, anyway, welcome. Thank you for joining me. So, we'll start today with the pilot episode of Lost. So, I'll just open it up first time and just say, how did you come to find the show, really? If anyone wants to start off.
I was trying to remember. I've not. How long ago was it? Like,
I think it started in 2004.
Yeah.
I've got it here. It started September 2004 was when it first aired in the States.
so I would have been how old? Okay, I'm 34 now. So how old would I have been back then?
Well, it's
18?
16 years ago, I think.
Jesus. Okay, so I was living at home with my parents.
Yeah.
I think if I'm probably making a massive presumption because I did this with most films and TV. I probably downloaded the first episode on some P2P or stream site or something.
Don't suppose you remember ISO Hunt?
Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah, or torrent probably. But
Yeah.
I don't think. I think it was just kind of word of mouth, and we didn't have. I don't think we had Twitter back then or Facebook, so it was kind of. I looked on maybe IGN, and they were kind of like pimping it up and saying it was going to be the biggest new show.
If my knowledge, I'll have to double check this, but I think this was at the time, especially like ABC they just brought out, or that season they were doing Desperate Housewives, I think, Lost, and then I believe Grey's Anatomy started then as well. So they had like those three big hitters all at once. But initially, it was like doomed to fail. All three of them, I believe. And I was going to get into it in a bit, but I do know that initially the guy who greenlit it, I believe, was temporarily fired because at the time it was the most expensive pilot, and they said,
Yeah.
Why the hell did you do this?"
Yeah. I read that last night while I was looking through some trivia as well. It's like they heard the pitch and they were like, "Nah, I don't think so, mate." And then it goes on to become, what we all know and love. It's like, maybe we should get him back.
I was going to say, I think it cost anywhere between $10 to $14 million at the time, which, to be honest with you, I can't really think that's surely still got to be high up in the cost of pilots in TV land, even by today's standards.
And especially in 2004 money,
Yeah, it was suicide immediately. Absolute immediately, especially because I think it would probably be largely to do with like purchasing the plane, really,
Yeah.
and blowing it all up.
You think all the travel because they filmed in. Did they film in Hawaii?
Yeah, that was the home of the show. Yeah, Oahu.
Yeah. So it's to get all your crew out there and then all the cast, and there was, and in the first few shots of the opening shot of the beach, and you see like hundreds of people there basically. You got to fly all those people over there. You got to cater for all those people. Get all your rigs down. It's yeah. I mean, 40 million. I mean, it could have easily been much more than that.
That's what I was thinking actually when I was watching it. I was thinking at the time, and still by today's standards, 14 million does seem a lot. But when you look at what they managed to get on screen and what they actually managed to achieve in those just under 2 hours, I guess, it's actually quite cheap in a way.
Yeah, it looks like a movie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I was going to say, so I think I first discovered it was on Channel 4 originally, if I remember.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing trailers for like the week before it aired.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that both parts aired at the same time in the UK, whereas they aired one after the other in the States. But I just remember watching them at my nan's house because I was staying over. I distinctly remember it for some reason, and that was it. I was hooked. And I think for me as well, that was like it was the first like serialized TV series I'd watched, something along those lines anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was the same. I definitely watched it on Channel 4, and I remember those adverts that they ran. I don't know if they were specifically to just for Channel 4. I don't know if they do that. That's probably quite expensive for them to do. But it was just all the cast standing moodily on the beach while there was like whispers going on in the background. I vividly remember that advert, and then I remember sitting down, like you, Scott. I was still living at home with mum and dad, so me and my dad, it was like appointment television. Watched it every single week, and it was one of those ones, as you say, no Facebook, no Twitter, so you're like you couldn't help but talk to everybody about it, because everybody seemed to watch it. So it was just one of those ones where I hate using the phrase water cooler TV, but it really was at the
really
time,
was. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, definitely like around school and everything, I do remember everyone was just saying, what was it in the trees and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then you have basically all your theories about what the monster was and everything like that. As a bare minimum, everything else was just part and parcel. Right. Sweet. So I guess we'll just get into the episode, really. So my initial thoughts for it were obviously straight away, you know who your protagonist is, because obviously it opens on the eye opening of Jack, and you're immediately aligned with that guy as he realizes he's slightly injured, and then he runs through the trees, and like we've already mentioned, there's just hundreds of people, and you're met with this huge chaos. You can hear the fire and everything and explosions, and just the general scenario, you're immediately thrown into this madness. I mean, from a general point of view, you don't expect it to go where it goes later on in the series, but from a beginning perspective, it just sucks for me, and disagree obviously if you want, but for me, those opening 20 minutes or so successfully introduce every single person that you're going to know over the next 2 seasons or so.
Yeah.
Within just a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And that's all through him saving them, basically.
Yeah, it's very good. It's, as I say, it's very efficient economic storytelling. And that opening, like you said, the opening 20 minutes, and yeah, even the opening 6 or 7, just like before the wing falls down, like that's just relentless, and it tells you everything you need to know about Jack, certainly.
Yes.
But just the introduction of, maybe there's about 6 or 7 main characters in that first little bit.
Yeah, there's Claire, Hurley. I think Charlie's in there briefly. I know you get a glimpse of Locke, but he's not really focal at this point.
Michael is on the beach shouting for Walt, as he will be doing quite a lot.
As he always does. That got old very quick.
It's Jin, isn't it? I'm trying to remember
Jin
everybody's
and Son,
name.
yeah.
Jin and Son.
Jin and Son, yeah. Jin's shouting on the beach as well. But yeah, no, it's such a great opening, and like I was surprised it was only 6 or 7 minutes that first week, because when I remember watching it for the first time, and it felt like it was an episode in itself.
Yeah.
It could be an episode in itself,
That's it. You're just immediately straight into the middle of something. You think, where the hell are we? What's going on?
Yeah.
You come out of the trees and you're like, oh shit, this is how are they here? But you haven't got to. Yeah. It's almost like you don't have time to know what that is, and neither does Jack. He's just got to call into action and save all these people. And like you've said, it tells you everything, albeit briefly. You need to know about him as a person and a character, especially going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably one of the most efficient character introductions ever.
I agree.
I think because all three of us have pretty much agree on the point that it tells you everything you need to know about Jack. When he opens his eyes, it's like, okay, it's almost explicitly telling you this is our character. This is like the main character. This is where we're going to be running with for the next 6 years. By giving him the occupation of doctor, it immediately makes him heroic without even knowing anything else about him. So they put the doctor occupation, or the spinal surgeon occupation on him. Immediately he becomes more amiable and more well regarded. And then once he gets to the beach and he's running around helping people, you think, okay, so he's almost like a superhero. So this guy's obviously written to become a major focal point and someone that they're all going to be looking up to.
Yeah, I think those leadership qualities are immediately apparent.
Yeah, and the fact that he's a surgeon, just like throws you straight up to the top of the pecking order in terms of leadership qualities. But what I did find interesting is that, like, obviously we learn across the seasons, like other people kind of vie from the leadership sort of spot. Like Locke has a lot of leadership qualities, and Sawyer as well, and Kate to a lesser degree. But it's interesting how you don't really get any kind of protest from anyone to what Jack's doing. Everyone just kind of lets him do his thing. I was just kind of thinking, like, was that on purpose? Did they purposely just want it all to be Jack, and no one at all would come in and try to kind of oust him?
Well, I mean, this could bring us to a good point, actually, because I don't know if you knew this anyway, or it's part of the trivia, but originally his character was going to be killed off by the end of this pilot.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and played by Michael Keaton, wasn't that what the rumor was?
That's correct. Yeah, they wanted. Hold on a second. So the role was originally offered to Michael Keaton, and they initially wanted him to die midway through. And apparently, the pilot that gets munched by the monster was going to be Jack, and he was going to be the one in the tree at the end of the first half of the pilot.
And we know who that is.
Yeah,
J.J. Abrams' best mate, Greg Grunberg.
Who's sadly died in many a J.J. Abrams film.
It is quite funny that you mentioned that, though, because when I was watching the episode last night, it seems like they didn't really rewrite it. They just changed the character names, and then Jack just stumbles out of the jungle. So it's like, I don't think he changed the script that much. He just kept him alive once he wasn't as famous an actor. But I thought that was interesting. I think that would have been a good way to go if you had cast somebody like a big, well-known name.
Yeah.
Just that kind of power move to let you know, oh, this show isn't messing about. They'll kill Michael Keaton, for example.
Well, for me, that would have been at the age I first watched it. I'd be like, "Oh my god, you've just killed Batman! How rude!" It'd blow everything out of the water for me. No pun intended there. But I mean, I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever that as soon as you see Jack, you're just like, right. I don't know about you, but I just immediately thought, I like this dude. I don't know why.
He has a likable face.
Matthew Fox, yeah, he does, doesn't he? And he's just very apparent, and there's all that urgency in him. And then I think where I was coming from when I said like the first 20 minutes, obviously you get all the initial chaos out of the way. So obviously he saves Claire, I believe. Yeah, Claire gets her out of the way of everything exploding. I always thought that was really funny when, I think it's when the engine blows up, that guy gets sucked in, which is obviously, every plane film where there's a plane crash, someone has to get sucked into an engine. It just makes me think of The Incredibles with the cape joke, but so I always thought it was really amusing that she gets blown forward, and I'm thinking she's 8 months pregnant. Surely that's going to cause potential problems further down the line, but it does, but of a different variety.
Yeah, because in 2004, I was a young man, and watching this in 2020, it's like I have 2 kids. It's like that's very unsafe, Claire. Watch yourself there.
But even now, it just feels like one of those silly, like J.J. Abrams kind of plot points that you don't really think about too much. You just kind of go with it, and you just think, yeah, 3rd trimester, 8 months pregnant, why not? Sure, just that's fine. But what I was thinking in terms of those first 20 minutes is obviously you get through all that chaos. He's saved all these individual characters that are going to become like the bread and butter of the show as it moves forward. But then it's that bit immediately after when it's all kind of calmed down and he goes himself to kind of tend to his own wound.
Yeah.
And I think that's the next bit for me when he meets Kate and he starts, confiding in her about his backstory almost. And again, it's something that sometimes, I guess, depending on the actor, like we've already said, he's quite likable. In lesser hands, that's just kind of like exposition for Basil exposition, I guess, just talking to the audience and telling them things. But you just, you all of a sudden, within 10 minutes, you've got the heroic qualities, and then you start to feel like this guy already. He starts talking about that spinal surgery that went wrong and how he needed to just let the fear in and then be called to action. And you just think, oh shit, he's just done that. That's so clever.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's just perfect writing. And I remember, like the other night when I was watching it, I was pausing it for the minutes. And I think that was about on the 17th minute. And you just think, it's like we've said, it's efficient, it's perfect.
I can't argue. I wonder if there's a moment, just before he runs onto the beach. I didn't notice, and I've only thought about it there now, where he does that 5-second count before running onto the beach.
Do you know what? I've never noticed that. And if there is, that's even more genius.
I'm not sure if there is. I'm going to go back and watch it to see if they've done that.
Oh, God.
I mean, that would be pretty good. I'll be disappointed now if it doesn't happen, but it's funny that like the scene on the beach when I was watching it there the other night, I thought, I wonder if looking back on this, it's going to look cheap. You know the way sometimes you go back to something and it's like, oh dear, that's not nearly as good as I thought it was, but it holds up so well.
And I don't even think like you'd get away with it now.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I really don't think certain production companies or anything would be like, you want to take a what to a Wahoo?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because it is all real, bar a couple of like CGI explosions, like your man getting sucked through the engine. That all that stuff was there. You can't fake that, really. I don't think.
No.
So it lends it a real sort of visceral feel as well, which is beneficial to it.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting to make a note for me anyway, because going further down the line, especially in cinema, they've become obviously people quite near and dear to me. So whether you think it or not, J.J. Abrams, obviously one of the creators of the show, and then obviously went on to do both Star Trek and Star Wars. But Damon Lindelof as well wrote the story for this one, and then obviously he'd go on to be the main showrunner alongside Carlton Cuss, I believe is his name. But it's just interesting how they were there from the very beginning, and there was all this talk, obviously going through the series, did they know where they were going? Well, I guess you could say yes and no, depending on how you feel as the show went on, ended. But, I just found it quite nice to know, because I didn't actually know that Damon Lindelof was there from the beginning. It's quite nice to know that he stayed the course in a way. It was kind of like his baby, and he clearly had an idea of where they wanted to go with it.
I think there's a moment in the second part, not to jump ahead too much, but that I think is quite telling of how the story in Lost works. So they're going. The group is going to get the signal on the satellite phone, I think it is, and they run into the polar bear, and it's just like that's one of those ideas where it's like, just throw in the polar bear now, we'll explain it later, and that sort of encapsulates sort of a lot of Lost storytelling. Like, I love Lost, but some of the things are just like, okay, I'm waiting for this payoff. It's going to come at some point, I hope.
Well, just whilst we're talking about that, I have spent years defending the polar bear thing. Because it does actually get explained at one point, but people are like, oh no, they never explain polar bears. I'm like, they do actually explain the polar bear thing, but anyway.
They do. And it's quite a satisfying explanation, I thought, as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it just annoyed me, but further down the line, I'm sure we'd get to that one. But obviously Sawyer unleashes his wild side and does it in. But I agree with you. If I was writing a show where I wanted to go, right, what's crazier than the bushes moving and a weird noise? Clearly something huge. I'm like, no, stick a polar bear on there. Why not? It's a tropical island.
Yep.
So just a bit of a quick rewind then. So obviously you're starting to get these core characters involved. So obviously we know Jack's the main dude. We've got Claire, Hurley, Jin and Sun. Obviously the one person we've not mentioned is Saeed, who has long been one of my favourite characters on the show. He starts to organise the cleanup group, and again, it's kind of like what you were saying, Scott, that he's got those leadership qualities, but no one ever necessarily vies for it in terms of what Jack represents. It's always like they agree with him, they understand him, but they also have their own roles within everything. And I quite liked that. But I also quite like that they've all got their own attributes, so he's like the technical wizard. I don't know if anyone picked up on that, and then it's just like he's the dude for the rest of the show that's going to be the technical guy.
It is very much like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's the tech guy. He's the cool
Exactly.
guy. He's the really annoying one. He's the lead. Yeah, they all kind of have these stereotypical sort of or archetypal sort of character um, or occupation sort of tacked onto him. But what I really liked about Saeed is, well, actually, one thing is that I completely forgot about his fate in the show. I had to kind of go back and remind myself, and I was like, did he actually die really early on or not? But
Yeah, me too.
I like this little interaction. I think it might be in the second part. He has a little conversation with Hurley, and Hurley's like interested about how he knows about all this stuff, and he's like, oh yeah, I did like comms and stuff. Oh well, for like the Air Force, and it's like like National Guard or something for like Iraq or something.
Republican Guard.
That's it, Republican Guard. And Hurley's reaction is just brilliant.
That's actually quite interesting because when this got released, obviously this was 3 years after 9/11, so it was it was obviously still very raw, still very new. And then you do this kind of. I know it's not necessarily like the reason the plane goes down isn't to do with that, obviously, as you later find out. But putting someone of Saeed's ethnicity, I guess, into the show and obviously feeding it with those potential plot lines would have, I guess, attracted viewership in a way. It's a storyline that would have tantalized a certain audience.
They kind of got that thing out of the way very quickly, which is really well done, because they didn't have any kind of context to this scene, but where Saeed and Soy have that little fist fight on the beach, there's no kind of build up to it. It's just like, we're going to get this thing done and dusted. This is kind of any preconceived notion that he could be a terrorist. We're not going to kind of we're not going to focus on it too much. So skirt over it to get it done. Right, that's it. No, he's a decent dude.
Yeah, and I do actually think when they do eventually go into Saeed's backstory, even though it is taking place obviously when he's in the Republican Guard, it's all dealt with very very well, and
it's all tastefully done.
Tastefully done, yeah. He's not a bad guy at all, and that'll bring me nicely, as we've already mentioned, onto Hurley, who I guess he's kind of the heart and soul of the show in a way. He's the nice one, the cheerful chap with all the bad luck, but we don't know that just yet. But I don't know who is everyone's favorite character.
I forgot about the whole thing with Hurley's bad luck.
Oh yeah,
shit.
Like, there's so much of the show I've forgotten about that I really just can't wait to watch again.
We've got that to come, lads. if you stay in the course, you've got the. I'll not be nerdy just yet, but I know them off by heart. We've got the whole numbers business.
But like Hurley's great. I mean, I guess every show has that everyman character. But he's the one character you just love from the start.
Yeah, I think it's because he kind of has the stoner dude vibe. Just 'cause he goes, dude. Yeah. He's got the Keanu thing, dude. Like, but yeah, I guess whilst I'm just looking through the character list here, I've got my tablet up, but just running through them. So like, you've got the pretty boy in Boone, I guess, like we're saying about archetypal, but then you've got the annoying bratty sister, Shannon.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I ever liked her from the beginning.
No, I just have a note written. I just have a note written down here. Shannon is awful.
Shannon and Boone are both morons.
They're awful. Like, Boone becomes a bit more interesting when he goes off with Locke, but then that doesn't last very long.
No.
Shannon is just terrible. And again, you mentioned looking up the fate of characters. It's like, I cannot remember what happened to her. Oh no, wait! I just have.
She gets shot by someone, does she not?
It's her fate. Is it tied to Walt in some way?
I think is it Michelle Rodriguez?
It could be Ana Lucia accidentally, or someone accidentally shoots her for some reason. I think you're right though, Scott. It's tied to Walt in some way.
He's always fucking off going missing.
With the bloody dog.
The bloody dog.
That bloody dog. Cute dog, but bloody nuisance.
Why do you call your character Bone?
Yeah. Do you know what? Hang on a second. I'm just going to go on his wiki page and see if that's his nickname at all, or if they ever gave him any. No, that's his name.
Bone or Boney.
Booney. Boone Carlisle. Yeah. Boone Carlisle.
I think they're effective characters because they're clearly meant to be these. Well, he's definitely a moron, and she is just this vapid, self-centered. She's your classic Kardashian type, proxy, and fortunately, she is off quite early on.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole Saeed thing I didn't really get
Oh God, yeah, I forgot about that.
for like a booty call.
Yeah, well, you're on a desert island. There's not much to do, I guess. But
She was the most illegible like lady there because she had like Rose, who was, you know, no go. You had Claire, who was like 8 months preggers. You had Son, who was like a beaten wife at the time,
and faking that she could speak English.
Right.
Yeah, and then Kate had googly eyes for Jack, and that was it. So so she obviously they had to have some kind of eye candy in there
Yeah.
for some characters, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just reading here. I didn't know this, but this kind of sums up Boone in a way. His occupation is lifeguard.
Oh yeah, because they had that line about the pens, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Which one? Yeah. Which one's good? They're all good. You see that from Ian Somerhalder. He delivers it in such a wimpish way, and then Matthew Fox is just dead cool. He's like, they're all good.
Yeah.
You just think, oh, he's too cool, man. He's too cool.
That part whenever everything sort of calms down and Jack's just taking a breather, just before Boone comes in. I think that's the first hint of like what would become known as the Lost, I guess, the score, the Giacchino score.
Yeah.
And I just forgot how good it was. I was trawling through Spotify for the I think it's one of the season 3 soundtracks.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's near the end. I think it's the Not Penny's boat moment.
Oh my God.
It's just so good.
My absolute. I mean, we'll get to it, but that is my all-time favorite episode of TV ever.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Not just Lost. That whole it's season 3 finale. That whole business is just so well done. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But that score is just it's amazing. It's so great.
I was going to say as well, and I think one of the things that blew my mind, like you say, when the credits do start finally come up after everything's died down a little bit, and you see everyone's names coming up, you got to remember as well at the time, and I think still by today's standards, I believe there was like 14 or 15 main speaking roles in this show, which is ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
It's such a massive multicultural show as well, which again at the time was just probably unheard of, really. So
not many.
I think
not many.
The great thing about Lost, but it's the legacy of the show, is that it was probably the first of its kind. You know, where you could have an ensemble cast and it could be this really high production serial, and also you didn't have any name actors really in there. I think obviously you had Dominic Monaghan was known, of course, from doing Lord of the Rings, but other than that, there wasn't like any big marquee stars attached to it. So it should be, I think it should be best remembered really for being such an incredible show without having any big actors attached to it.
Yeah.
I think it kind of stands to reason that the performances.
I've never watched it, but I think Matthew Fox was in Party of Five, I believe, so he might have been known to like American audiences. And like you say, Dom Monaghan. But other than that, there wouldn't have been anybody.
Yeah, really. I think all had experience in TV work, obviously. Terry O'Quinn was, I think he'd been in many movies.
Oh, of course. Stepfather.
yeah, exactly.
Class. If anyone does actually listen to this and watch The Stepfather, it's great. Sorry, bit of a sidebar there.
But yeah, I looking back on it, you think most of the big shows we have now, like on Netflix and HBO, I'm between that and The Sopranos. I reckon Lost was pretty much the catalyst for many, if not most, of those types of shows now, in terms of scale and
100%.
What they could do with it.
You think about how many shows started doing flashbacks in like the immediate aftermath of either Lost beginning or definitely finishing.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many of these non-linear shows that just decided to throw in flashbacks as a way of exposition, and it didn't work half as well. They never ever tie it into like the one thing that Lost did really well was tie it into the themes of the overall episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like the flashbacks were always relevant to what was happening on the island, but they could work independently too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when other shows tried to copy that, they couldn't work it right.
Yeah, the shows I was thinking of that sort of sprang up in Lost's wake, I'm not sure if they happened after it had finished or while it was still on TV, But I remember two specifically. There was one that was Flash Forward,
Oh
um,
my god,
called,
yes.
and it was a Lost wannabe. I think I managed about 3 episodes and I quit. And there was another one called The Event, and they were both not good. Um, like it just really front loaded everything with there's this crazy mystery, just like in Lost, you know. It just yeah, it was a copycat, but it was just they were no good. I mean, I guess maybe Lost got there first, and if they had come first, maybe they might be what we're talking about now. But
Yeah.
no, there's something special about Lost. I think that those other shows didn't have.
I definitely remember Flash Forward because I, unlike yourself, kept up with it. I can't remember the massive resolution of it, but it was Joseph Fiennes, wasn't it? And
Oh yeah,
everyone blacked out for 5 minutes or something daft like that. And why did they do that? Funnily enough, also had Don Monaghan in it.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, he was like one of the main. I don't think he was like the baddie, but he was involved in why everyone started passing out for some reason.
Okay.
Because reasons.
Probably from heroin.
Yeah, yeah.
Smack.
Which I guess, now that we're mentioning him, brings me on to Charlie, who, again, also love. I don't know. I feel like it's a show where all the characters, aside from maybe Boone and Shannon, as we've already said, all these characters are likable in some way. And I think Charlie, even though he's got his issues, bless him, and a cracking song, which I was singing all to myself. I don't know about any of you two, but Drive Shaft, phenomenal. Because I mean, initially, you don't think he's got much of a purpose, do you? You just think he's like this rock star that's washed up. Again, a bit of an archetypal character. You don't think he's got much to add to it. But then, obviously, as the show progresses, he does. Especially in the second half of the pilot.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, it goes on the expedition. Yeah, I've always really liked Charlie, and I don't know if it's sort of residual affection for the actor, because I love Lord of the Rings, obviously, and you recognize his face from that. You just enjoy him in the show because he's like that sort of uh, cheeky chappy sort of character.
They kept him as a Brit, which was always good.
Yeah,
So you've got that.
yeah.
I guess then what I'd move on a little bit. So obviously they spend the time trying to figure out where they are, and if I remember rightly, is it at the end of no, that's part 2, or is it part 1? I can't remember. I only watched it the other night. So they go to find the transceiver, if I'm correct, at the end of towards the end of part 1, and that's when you get the monster for the first time. Well, yeah. When night falls, you get the loud noises and the crashing trees, and then obviously they go for the transceiver, and you get the first interaction, I guess, with what this monster may be. I personally forgot that it was even teased in these early stages. I don't know about yourselves.
Oh yeah. I sort of had that thought as well. There's a couple of things in the episode I was like, oh, they're doing this early. I thought this was maybe like episode 5 or 6, and the monster was definitely one of them. It's quite funny though. Whenever it attacks the cockpit, I mean, obviously at that stage, I don't think they were planning on it having it be the smoke monster that we all know, because you don't see anything at all. They're like, just have something chase them. We'll figure it out later. But I mean, it works really well. It's really, really tense. It reminded me a little of oddly one of the Jurassic Parks. I think maybe just because they're in a cockpit, but
yeah,
it's really strange to see the differences between what it is in the pilot and what it becomes.
Yeah, I got some serious horror vibes in this pilot from. I mean, like you say, the cockpit. It's very much like the T-Rex attack in the original Jurassic Park. But it's just, I didn't even realise when the pilot gets taken out that there was the blood splatter on the window.
That was a bit strange. You don't often see that on like a network TV show anyway.
No, you definitely don't. But like just the build-up of it, I was getting some serious horror vibes. I thought, wow, they're really pulling this off. I don't remember it being quite like this.
Yeah, and when they open the door and the co-pilot just falls straight down.
Oh yeah.
I've forgotten completely about that, and that did make me jump.
It's straight out of Resident Evil, that, like when they're opening up the lockers and like a body just falls out.
Yeah.
You just think, crap. But yeah, I mean, it really works to add that tension because, and I think straight away you're like, okay, this isn't a normal island. I know that sounds daft, but you know, straight away you hear those noises and you think, hey.
Yeah.
I mean, just out of curiosity, I don't know if you can remember it all, but what were your thoughts on the monster being, I guess?
I don't know. I don't remember.
No, I don't think I did.
When we first see the monster in its smoky form, like without just a sound.
Well, I guess just you see the trees move in the pilot, and you think, what did you think that was initially? Like you hear it, and you think you see a dinosaur or what?
Conga party come out from the bushes, sort of thing. Hey, come and join! It's luau season or something.
Big summer blowout.
Yeah, spring break. I don't know. I thought my initial thought was, okay, there's some kind of research facility going on here, and they're making like sick hybrids of animals, of like, owls and badgers or something.
Badgers.
These horrible hybrids of animals, and they're.
If they ever reboot Lost, which I hope they don't, they need to put badgers in it.
Actually, when I first saw that, when that scene was playing out, I was thinking to myself, like, it wouldn't have been funny if it just like a little ferret just ran out after all that tension.
Absolutely. Where was I? Oh yeah, so the cockpit. They're in the cockpit. Charlie disappears into the bathroom, which we later find out is for his drugs. But they awaken the concussed pilot, who, as we've already mentioned, is Mr. Abrams' best friend, and he relays to them that they lost radio contact about 6 or 7 hours into the flight, and they buggered it up for whatever reason and went to Fiji and didn't quite make it.
It's like 1,000 miles off course or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that felt like a big number. That's a long way to like be off. That's another classic, stranded at sea or whatever archetype. I think it's like we were definitely 1,000 miles off course. You're like, is it closer to 400 maybe? 1,000 feels a lot, but obviously you get the revelation that whoever's looking for them will not be finding them at all. And that, I guess, kind of sets the show up for some longevity in a way. You've got at least a season or two in there, haven't you? But I think with the addition of like the monster, and then obviously as the pilot keeps going, I think what the best thing that this pilot manages to do, aside from introducing all these characters, is actually give you reason to keep watching it. Like, there's the story in this. There's a lot of it.
Yeah. I had written down again at the end of the episode just to see what sort of what hanging threads there were just from the opening 2 episodes. So I have 4 things. There's the monster, obviously. So we don't know what that's about. There's the polar bear. We don't know what that's about.
Yep.
There's the French woman on the radio.
Oh yeah, that was great.
And also there's Kate. What's going on with her?
Yep.
Because the the marshal that wakes up eventually at the end.
Yes, that's correct.
So that's like 4 pretty interesting mysteries, to keep you hooked, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the French woman, because I mean, I remember being very scared by that. Again, the horror vibes were quite. I mean, when I was younger, I was scared by it. Not as much now, but just that sense of dread. It's all these. It's almost to use an onion, I guess, is like the general idea. You're peeling off the layers.
Yeah.
And you just think there's more and more story here. Like, oh, there's a voice. Yeah, we're saved. No, it's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
And obviously that does bear some interesting fruit further on into the show, even this season, I believe.
Yeah.
But just that initial sense of absolute dread and loss. There's they're 1,000 miles off course, and then he gets eaten by the monster. You've got the transceiver, but you can't get a signal. And then you do fix it a little bit. They go on their little walk, find the polar bear, shoot it. But then you get this revelation that for whatever reason, it's been looping for 15 or 16 years, I think Saeed
Yeah.
says.
Yeah.
Oh, and Shannon does serve a purpose there, thinking about it, because she knows French all of a sudden.
French. That's right. That's right. It's a really great scene. That like it's really panicky and just it strikes the right tone because everybody's talking over each other and you're following the thread of her translating the French and Saeed working out the numbers, the iterations of the message, and then everybody else panicking in between and Sawyer giving off to Saeed at the same time,
Yeah,
and then it all ends with Charlie's iconic line. But yeah,
absolutely.
like so many mysteries to keep you hooked, and it's just like I'm trying not to constantly go. I just love Lost, but I really do just love Lost.
I really, really do. It's my favourite show. I mean,
Yeah.
for all it's good, don't get me wrong, it had some bad moments, and we'll definitely discuss those as they come about. For me personally, anyway. But just because it was for me the first of its kind that I'd ever watched,
Mm-hmm.
it's so sentimental for me. I can't not say there are arguably better shows in a way, but for me, it's just the absolute best.
Yeah,
I can't get past it at all. And I mean, just whilst you've mentioned Charlie's iconic line, I think to end it on there, because there's such, obviously it begins with all the chaos. You get the weirdness, so you're getting the idea of the supernatural or whatever is going on this island.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get a sense of hope. You've got the transceiver. Could they get saved? And then finally, it's kind of like the group are resolved to being lost.
Mm-hmm.
Without any pun. They're just like, oh shit, where are we?
Yeah.
What is actually happening? And I just think that was so powerful to end on that, and then obviously take you into the rest of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Mad.
Yeah, again, I can't argue. And one that I'd sort of I had forgotten about is the way the episodes open with just the word "lost" coming towards you, and the way they end just with that boom, lost right at the end. It's just like a full stop on the end of this. It's like that's where we're leaving you. This is our cliffhanger for this week. Boom, lost.
I completely forgot about the title card, and I forgot that it's intentionally distorted. The words as it comes towards you. I remember thinking the other night as my TV gone to pot, thinking that's not right, and then I remembered they did that on purpose. But it's definitely sometimes you don't need a big opening credits. That's just perfect,
No.
and the sound is very unsettling as well.
They blew their budget on obviously the filming and the production, so the title card had to be cheap as possible.
Yeah, you can imagine the meeting, can't you, between like Abrams and Lindelof? Is like, right, we need a title card. What do we do? And well, shit, JJ, we just spent $40 million blowing up a plane and introducing these guys. What do you want to do? And he's like, I've got it. Let's have it. The word lost spinning towards the camera. Okay, why not? So my other thing I noticed is obviously you get very little flashbacks in this episode because obviously you're introducing all the characters, but you do get a couple, and they're predominantly on the plane itself.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really liked was, I always like it when shows or films do this, but when you see the same scene played out from different perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I always find that really cool. So obviously the initial one is Jack sitting opposite Rose, saying about, forgot his name, her husband, who does eventually pop up. But they're talking about him. It's going to kill me, that.
We'll just say Neville for now.
Oh, is it Bernard?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Is it Bernard? Yeah, something like that. So they're sat talking. Obviously, it all goes tits up. Plane's going down. But then you get the same perspective from Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the same perspective with Kate as well. And it's just really, I found it, I don't know if you agree, but I just found it really cool how you got those perspectives all around the plane almost. But then you see the tail end go off. And you just know immediately there's story there. And obviously they do go on to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just this idea that there's all these possibilities that they could do with this show. They literally gave themselves free reign. It was just so well written.
Yeah, but I love how as you mentioned, I love the overlapping flashbacks between the three of them. But I love how each one escalates. So you see Jack, but Jack passes out when they hit the turbulence, and then you get Charlie and he gets knocked around a bit, and then it's not until Kate's flashback, which is quite near the end of the second episode, I think, where you
Yeah.
see what you want to see. It's a bit like, when are they going to get to the fireworks factory? But then you
Yeah.
see the tail come off at the very end, and you're like, oh right, okay, that's what I wanted to see this whole time.
That was at least $7 million.
I would have thought, yeah, but no, it's really good. It builds the tension with each one of those flashbacks, and then you just see the whole thing just completely go to hell in Kate's one. It's very good. Ramps up the tension nicely.
Yeah, and I think it gets you used to the idea that this is how the show is going to go going forward. You know, you get the idea that these flashbacks will become a focal point, if not, in some cases, the most important aspect of the show, depending on the character involved. Does anything else happen in it? I think that's about it, really.
We covered it.
Yeah, I think we've covered it.
I had that cool kind of introduction to Locke.
Oh
between
yeah,
him and Walt, and he started talking about the history of checkers, and then you get that the theme of duality kind of strikes up in that scene.
oh yeah, black and white. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I guess you could. Yeah, those are the main themes of the show, but there's so many themes that it introduces, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, big time.
Because I mean, you've definitely got I think it was the name of an episode actually, but the Man of Science. Obviously, you get Jack, and just with that little scene, you get the Man of Faith in Locke.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, effectively, yeah, you do have opposing ideals all around. Jack and Sawyer have this. They have differences of opinion how to run things, and but yeah, the most prominent one is Jack and Locke. Because I think in the early seasons there wasn't much of a. I might be completely wrong. Wasn't much of any altercation between them. It only kind of started brewing later on. I might be completely wrong about that though.
No, I think you're right, and I think it only really comes to a head initially. I think it's all stemmed from the hatch, the idea of the hatch, and what is it, and Jack's more or less dismissive of it, and it doesn't need to be unearthed. We don't really. I mean, I haven't got that far yet in rewatch. I can't really remember, but I do know that Locke's absolutely hell bent on opening it because it's some,
It's a sign.
It's a sign. It's a mystical thing. It needs to be opened, and Jack's just like, "What do you expect to get from it?" He doesn't take that leap of faith. Just interestingly, I'm reading a bit more trivia, just whilst we've covered the episode, but just interesting about going back to Shannon. Despite being a terrible character, I just keep finding her. Initially, apparently, the producers were looking for someone who had a Paris Hilton quality. But she could not just be shallow, as the storyline would require more than that.
Okay.
She was written as an antipathetic character in the first season, as the producers needed a character they could use to create opposition and conflict. So I guess just shouting at people was her way of doing opposition and conflict.
It's mission accomplished, I guess.
Yeah, I guess in a way, it's a genius character.
Yeah.
And also, I did not know this, but one of the only shots that had to be reshot for the pilot, which I think in itself is a massive achievement to not really have to reshoot anything, was the polar bear, because apparently there was a pre-broadcast commercial in the States and people were freeze framing it and mocking the stuffed polar bear that they used on the internet.
I think I've seen that picture somewhere.
I might have to find it after this.
Yeah, it's just like a big teddy bear looking thing.
So ABC apparently promptly replaced it with a CGI bear, because now that I think about it, you don't really see even when it's dead. You just see the fur and kind of the back of it, don't you? You don't really actually see the bear itself. That's brilliant. I love stuff like this, little tidbits about episodes. So yeah, I think that's everything for now. Smashing. So that just takes you nicely into episode 3, which I believe is called Tabula Rasa, but we can get to that on another later date. So thank you guys for joining me. Killing some quarantine time.
I wonder how far we'll get into the show before this.
Well, to be honest with you, given what they've been saying, I don't know. We could probably finish it at this rate. Who knows? But we'll definitely do it again. I'm up for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's been good to revisit.
I'm glad I wasn't just talking. I'm glad I just wasn't talking to myself.
Yeah, no, 100%. Thank you very much for having us.
Get watching the episode 3 then, I guess, and we'll decide when we'll do it again.